So we've all heard that sitting is the new smoking. So why is that? Well, excessive sitting will literally shave good years off your life. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't sit that much. Well, most of my patients, they sit in a car to drive to work. They sit at a computer most of their day. At their end of the day, they drive back in their car. And then to relax at night, they sit in front of the TV. And they're probably sitting on their phones in between. So all of this sitting leads to really damaging posture that becomes very difficult to fix. And I know this from taking care of thousands of patients over the last 20 years, that if we don't work in some extra mobility and some movement into your day, you could end up with postures that are impossible to fix. So here's a simple solution. So every 30 or 60 minutes, let's get up, let's try some of these stretches, some of these exercises. And what I've found with our patients is that when they incorporate these into their day, they have less pain, they have more mobility, and they have more energy. So give these a try and let me know in the comments how it makes you feel.
Look familiar? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of these seated postures I know some of us can't avoid through the day. And hopefully you're not spending a lot of time like this through your day. And if you are, you better pay very close attention. So let's talk about sitting, what it does to the spine, and how we can be more efficient through our day. So essentially, the reason sitting's so bad for the spine is because when you sit, it puts the most amount of compressive force on the discs. So again, what the discs are, they're gelatinous material between each bone that act as shock absorbers. And the problem is that the longer you sit, the more your spine compresses through the day. The other problem is that the more that we sit, it shortens tissue in the front and it weakens muscles in the back, and it can lead to a lot of hip and low back issues. So ideally through the day, what we do is that we hold a really nice seated posture and we're ergonomically correct, but also that you have tools throughout the day so that you can move your body and stretch as you need to. So essentially when we're seated, what we want to make sure that we do is that we got to make sure, like Jeff's sitting right now, and he's in a very good upright posture. So you can imagine that you would want your ear right around your shoulder. So we want to make sure that we're not sitting forward. So if you look at Jeff, his ear will be lined up with his shoulders. Why is that important? Because the weight of your head, every inch that you go forward, it will start to double the amount of stress on the spine and all the tissues in the back. So for every inch it doubles. So most people's head weighs about 10 or 12 pounds. So what that means is that every little bit that we go forward, we're adding more and more compressive force to the spine. And almost everybody that sits at a computer, if you came to them and just touched the back of their shoulders and the muscles around their neck, they're going to jump or move because they're always tender. Why? Because you have a bowling ball sitting on top of your spine, and every little bit that it's forward, again, it's adding force to the spine and also pulling on all the soft tissue. So what's the remedy? Well, we got to make sure that our head is in a position that it can sustain itself over long periods of time. And the only place that is if it's lined up over the shoulder. So one of the things that we have to do is make sure that the pelvis is also not hunched this way. So you got to make sure that your pelvis is holding a little bit of an arch or a tiny bit of a tilt so that the rest of our spine isn't going forward. Because if we lose this arch here, right, if our back goes this way, then our spine in the lumbar area has so much compressive force, it's going to put a lot of stress on the discs. So we want to stay out of that. So the other thing we have to be able to do is hold our pelvis in a good position and hold our neck over the rest of our spine. So if you can do those two things, you're going to take some pressure off your spine. Now, ideally, we would be moving around every 15 minutes at a maximum. I have patients that sit for hours and hours and hours. Again, thankfully, I don't sit for long. But if I do sit for too long, I can already feel like my back, my hips, you can feel the stiffness. So I'm so thankful I don't have to do that all day. But if you do have to do that all day, what we're going to do is we're going to show you a couple things you can do throughout the day and something called micro breaks. So micro breaks are things that you can do throughout the day that will relieve pressure on the spine. So ideally, you would stand up every 15 minutes, move around, okay? What we're gonna do is show you a total of 6 things that you can do around your desk that are easy to do. You don't necessarily need to do all these things every 15 minutes, but for sure, try and get out of this seated posture every 15 minutes, get a drink of water, move around, and let your eyes basically get away from a computer screen. So you want to focus on something else besides a computer screen every 15 minutes. So Jeff's going to stand up. We're going to do the first one called micro breaks. So what he's going to do is basically reach up as high as he can. And what he's doing is elongating all the tissue that we have here and trying to like reach up as high as he can and go alternating. So you're going to do 15 or 20 on each side. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, so we talked about how when you sit for long periods of time, it shortens the tissue here in the front called the hip flexors. So what Jeff is going to do is just a real easy lunge. So you can do this standing beside your desk. And what we're going to do is the lunge, again, he's going to not hyperextend his back, but he's going to push his hips forward. And then we're going to reach up, which elongates through here. And then you can reach over to the other side. Yeah. Okay. So another stretch we can do is for the front of the hips called the hip flexors. And again, the reason we have to do this is because when you sit for long periods of time, all the tissue here shortens. And the hip flexors do attach to the spine. So it does put some load on the spine when we sit for long periods of time. So another really easy one that we can do beside our desk is like a simple lunge. So again, we want to make sure that Jeff doesn't just hyperextend his back. So he's in neutral spine here. And basically what we're going to do is push the weight forward, and then he's going to reach up and then over. And that stretches the hip flexors here. And you can do both sides. 15 to 20 seconds on each side. A lot of times when people come into the office, they'll tell me that they can't rotate equally left and right, or that their shoulder checks are getting more difficult. Sometimes this is a joint issue, sometimes it's a muscle issue. This one here addresses the muscle issue. So we call this palm up, palm down. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to start with your arms extended, and you're going to have one palm up, one palm down. And you're always going to look to the palm up side. So he's going to start on the palm up side, and then he's going to switch the other direction, palm up, and then the other way. And you can do that 15 to 20 times. And what that does is it takes out some of the tension in the muscles of the neck and in the upper back. So 15 to 20. You feel a little stretch there?
Yeah.
Perfect. Now another one we can do, which also is a good eye reset. So if we've been staring at a computer the whole day, this is really good for the eyes. So what Jeff's going to do is he's going to hold one thumb in front of him, and his eyes are going to focus on that thumb. And his eyes are going to stay focused on that thumb as he moves in a 45 degree. So he's going to go up and back. And he's going to do that 4 times on each side. So we're going to watch the thumb, go up and back. And then you do 4 times on each side. So you do 4 times on one side, then 4 times on the other side. So another great one that you can do at your desk when you stand up. This is really about trying to move this part of your spine here. So your thoracic spine. So basically what Jeff's going to do, he's going to start with both arms in front. His feet are pointed straight ahead. And what he's going to try and do is pull that arm back while keeping this one straight. Good. And then you go the other way. Perfect. You feel a nice stretch there?
Oh, yeah.
Great. So this does 2 things. It's moving the upper back, but it's also stretching these pecs. A lot of times when we sit and we get rounded forward, it shortens the tissue in the shoulder and the pec. So that creates easy mobility for us if we're sitting. Good job. So this is a really good one for the low back. So what Jeff's going to do, we're going to keep lordosis here. So what he's going to do, he's not going to hyperextend, but he's going to slightly tip his pelvis forward. He's going to keep that arch as he does a hip hinge. So he's going to hinge backwards. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to stretch the hamstrings a little bit, which is already good, and it's going to activate the muscles in the low back. Now, to accentuate this stretch in the front, what he's going to do is put his hands on his hips, and he's going to try and pull his elbows together. So as he pulls his elbows together, what we're doing, we're stretching the tissue here, and this is just a static hold, 30 to 60 seconds. What we're going to do, we're activating the muscles of the lumbar spine. We're stretching the hamstrings here. We're elongating the tissue in the front of the shoulder and the pec. So we're doing multiple things here, 30 to 60 seconds, and then our elbows are just going to push together. Good. Feel good?
Yeah.
Yeah.